There are a couple of things that I want to look at today in relationship to some current events. But first, I want to see if you have any questions. No questions, all right. That's because Evelyn is not here. Uh, what I'm gonna look at is a couple of things. I see a connection between what Jesus was talking about when he was speaking about sweeping the house clean. Then he said, "I will return into my house from whence I came out, and when he is come, he findeth it empty, swept, and garnished. Then goeth he and taketh with him seven other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter into the dweller, and the last state of the man is worse than the first. Even so shall it be also with this wicked generation."
What scripture are you reading?
Matthew 12, verses 44 and 45. Maybe I should have backed up to 43. When the unclean spirit is gone out of the man, he walketh through dry places, seeking rest and findeth none. I see a correlation between those particular words and verses, and two things that's happening. Well, several things are happening, but two in particular. And the two things in particular that I see related to this is what is happening with the evangelicals and Trump, and what happened with them in Florida, and what happened with what just happened with Harry and
Megan.
yeah, Megan. It appears as though these things are simply news events, but they are not. I believe that when we look at this scripture, I believe that what we have done is taken the opportunity.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
To sweep the house clean. Now, when I talk about when the scripture's talking about sweep the house clean, it's not talking about the house. Neither is it talking about you as an individual. It's talking about humanity, and it's speaking to the idea of the dogma. If we speak in today's vernacular, it would be the dogma of Christianity. And sweeping the house clean in reference to that would mean all those things that we perceive to be true and righteous, that we see that are not. That means that we have to remove them from the mindset of humanity. And if we do that and don't put anything in its place, then it will be worse than what it was from the beginning. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. So, if we look at that in reference to what is taking place, it is my contention that all the things that we have discussed and desires that we have expressed have put us in a position to have swept the house clean, meaning that we have disassociated humanity from these ideas of Christianity as it is purported to relate to the scripture. One of the things that I believe that presented itself as being a difficulty in doing it was because of how we had a mindset as it. Here comes the question. We have because we've had a mindset as it relates to Christianity slash Christian. Christianity slash scriptures and Elohim. Our mindset about Elohim has been one given to us by Christianity and by Judaism. The mindset that we've had, that we've been given, is that God is good, right? All the time, God is good. You heard that? Now, it sounds benign, but we do believe that. However, if God is good, then there can be no evilness with God. So it has to be more than good, because evilness is associated with God. I made darkness, I made light, right? I created evil, I created good, right? Isaiah?
Right.
So, but when you say something is good, that disconnects it from unrightness. Our whole concept has been that everything is right. And if everything is right, there's nothing to righten. If everything is righteous, there's no unrighteous. So we have to, so if, regardless of whether or not we believe that, express it that way, when we say that, when we use the term God in the way that it has been taught to us, then we are disconnecting it from what's real, from reality. Now, if that is the case, then that means that we have disconnected Elohim from our lives in a normal sense. Our everyday life is separate from Elohim. And the separation exists because we have created a God and a devil. God being good, the devil being bad. And the devil existing as an entity, just as God exists as an entity. When there is no distinction between Elohim, righteousness, unrighteousness, good and evil. There's no distinction between that. And if we assign the evil aspect of it to an entity called the devil or Satan, then we are disconnecting it from us as Elohim or from our Creator, Elohim. And if we do that, then we have a false sense of security that actually is an insecurity spiritually. And we don't even realize it. And because of that, we embrace pretty much anything. Now, as far as the African is concerned, what we have now, understand when I say African, I'm talking about us. Okay? Because when we say the Hispanic, we're not talking about people who necessarily were born in a Hispanic nation. Right? So I'm talking about the African, okay? When we as Africans deal with the Christianity that we have been given, what do we actually embrace as our God? The Caucasian. We worship Caucasians. They are our gods when we look at it from the church. Because everything we do in the church originated not with Elohim, but with the Caucasian church. The Caucasian view of Christianity is the view of Christianity that we have embraced. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And if everything that we embrace as being spiritual comes from the Caucasian, then that's our God, that's our Creator. That's who we worship. And as long as we stay in that mode of worshiping the enslaver, we will be slaves. As long as we stay in the mode of worshiping the one who bastardized the scriptures, then we will be bastardizers of the scriptures. We cannot separate ourselves from that if we continue to embrace that. The same thing that the Caucasian did to Christianity, they did to Judaism. The Western Europeans took the scriptures and made something called Christianity. and they determined what it looks like, and we embraced it. The Eastern Europeans took something called Judaism, well, actually the Old Testament scriptures, and called it Judaism and made it be what they wanted to be. So what we have done as a people of Eastern origin, we have allowed a Western mindset to take the major scriptural belief that we have embraced as a people and make them be what they wanted them to be. And as a result, if it is not Christianity, it is Judaism. And Judaism and Christianity has come together to defeat anything of color, i.e., Israel and the U.S., coupled with Western Europe, have come together to defeat anything that is of color.
But is Judaism originally? I thought that was people of color in the Bible.
Judaism, the scriptures of the Old Testament was, but the organized religion of Judaism wasn't. The organized religion of Judaism is predicated upon what Eastern Europeans said it is. Look at what happened during World War II. The Jews that Hitler was dealing with came from Eastern Europe. When you look at the Jews who were, the majority of the Jews who were killed during the Holocaust came from Eastern Europe. We look at it as Germany, but in Poland, in Romania, in Yugoslavia, that this is the area where they were slaughtered primarily. Now, if we take that and look at it coupled with history, what do we see? We see that the Catholics, which is Christians, were complicit with Hitler in what he did. And we see that the ones who were killed as Jews were Eastern Europeans. The idea of what we thought was Judaism actually has its origin in the Old Testament. Now, what happened is the Eastern Europeans took something called Judea and made it Judaism, as opposed to what it really is. If we look at the Old Testament, we don't see Jew, we see Hebrew. River crosses. There is no such thing as a Jew in the scriptures. It is Judah or Judea. And there was no organized religion under the Old Testament or the New Testament until Europeans put their hands on it. It was simply the way we lived in relationship with nature, as they called it, but in relationship with our Creator. There were no names. What did Jesus call it? He didn't call it Judaism. He didn't call it Christianity. What did Abraham call it? He did not call it Judaism. It was Hebrews who believed in a deity. Period. You see what I'm talking about? So if we look at that in relationship to what's going on, it is easier for us to see what happened at the turn of the century in 2000 with the ecumenical movement. What we see is Christianity and Judaism coming together, because both of them represent the same thing, racism. Both of them represent the same thing, manipulation of government and control of people of color. Both of them. So here we are. We are in a state of flux because we as a people have found, regardless of the direction we turn in, regardless of what we make an attempt to embrace, we are vilified if we embrace the truth and we are accepted if we embrace the lie. And the lie of Christianity and Judaism, which leads us to worship Caucasians. Because we get all of our direction from Caucasians. Example with Judaism. Why is it that the Jews believe that you cannot intermarry with anyone unless they convert to Judaism? The Catholics believe the same thing. You have to convert to a Catholic. Or to promise to raise your kids as Catholics, which is Christians. Why is it that when we look beyond Europe, we do not see organized religion? We see spiritual beliefs. Even the idea of Islam was never, ever an organized religion. Islam simply means those who submit to God. That's what Islam is. It talks about submission to a creator, to a divine entity, as opposed to an organized religion. There has never been a religion structured the way they are structured now, with the structure with exclusion. If you look at Islam, Islam did not exclude anyone. It protected everyone. If you look at it at its origin with Muhammad, it protected everyone. If you look at what is now called Christianity, what you see is Jesus embracing one who has been deemed to be a traitor. If suicide, based upon what Christians say, is what Christians say suicide, you go to hell, right? Why is it that Jesus didn't say Judas went to hell? Because he said that he hung himself.
Yeah.
So why he did not address that? Jews say if you commit suicide, if you die by suicide, your grave is unmarked, and you're disconnected from your Creator forever. Those are European beliefs. Those are not beliefs that came out of the East. We have to have a paradigm shift in the way we articulate what is spiritual and what is not. This week, when you asked me earlier, Bess, how was this week? It's been a week. It's been hectic, but not so much hectic in terms of a lot of the counseling I've done, but it's been hectic also in terms of some of the struggles I've had with what I'm talking about, in terms of understanding it. And because I had the same question that Barbara did when I started looking at Judaism, because of the sages. The sages were no different than the bishops in terms of their understandings. I do believe that it was allowed to be so for the preservation of the Holy Book. I believe that they were allowed to do what they did in order to preserve it, because if they did not believe that Christianity could serve their purposes, all of the writings would be gone. If they did not believe that the idea of Judaism would serve its purposes, all of the Old Testament writing would be gone. How do I know that? Tell me where you came from in Africa. Tell me one set of African spiritual beliefs. Everything that did not serve their purpose, they destroyed. Everything. So, whatever they could use to serve their purpose of colonization and imperialism, they did it. Now, why am I saying all of this? Because I see it coming to a manifested end. And the manifested end that I see is what is taking place right now. When I began to read things like evangelicals writing about Trump's visit to Florida, and the evangelicals praising him as if he were a god, and looking beyond what they say they believe about Jesus the Christ, and embracing the immoral attitudes of him in order to get what they want. And what do they want? What they want is judges and tax breaks. Now that's what the wealthy want. What the Christians want is power. The evangelicals want this country to remain in the hands of the white men. That's what they want. When we look at Israel, Israel wants that nation to remain in the hands of white men. Same thing. No difference in the two. When we look at, and I read in an article, speaking of Meghan and Harry, England is the essence of whiteness. The royal family is the essence of whiteness. And if the royal family is quote unquote tainted with a Meghan, then there is a problem. And that is the reason why she can do nothing right. Everything that she's done has been tainted with racist taunts. The picture with she and Harry holding the hand of a chimpanzee, and they're saying that's their son. You know, the statement of her having exotic looks. These are the things that's racist.
Yeah.
So what I see where I see the change coming, and what made this click is because she and Harry said we done.
Yeah.
Now, this is why I see it as ending. She and he are the most popular people in the royal family. Think about it. The British papers made a point of talking about where Meghan came from in terms of Straight Outta Compton and all the gangs that were in the neighborhood where she grew up, and comparing it with where Harry grew up, which is saying that you don't belong here. Yet they are trying to keep them in the family. Why? Because they understand something that we don't see. When they make their clean break, the royals are dead. There has never been a royal wedding with views as much as this wedding had. There were billions who watched that wedding on TV. There has never been the amount of money spent by tourists in London that relates to those two people. If they leave England, then the economy doesn't crash, but they will feel it. Because with them goes all the money that they spend on paraphernalia that relates to Meghan and Harry. With them goes all the money that's spent on tourism with people trying to get a glimpse of them when they come to their country. There's a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes. The whole idea of a quote-unquote royal family is coming to an end. This is the thing that gets me. The whole family of royalty came from a black woman. And now it is being brought to an end by a black woman. The whole idea of it is coming to an end by a woman, a black woman born in one of the most racist countries in the world, and by a man who is born in one of the whitest countries in the world. That's what I'm talking about. You say, well, what does this have to do with Christianity and Judaism? The idea of these two things coming to an end relates to Christianity because the church in England is pumped up by the government and the royal family. The Queen makes decisions about the Church of England. Israel makes decisions about Judaism for everybody, regardless of where you are in the world. So when you when you look at it, we see the bastardizing of of the Old New Testament, of Islam, of all these things by people who are racist. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you.
Any question about this? So I'm talking about. You can mute your phone, Audrey. I'm talking about a computer rather. I'm talking about the idea of what we of sweeping the house clean. What we have begun to do is deal with the reality of what is without regard to what people think about us or how they feel about us. The whole, if you want to keep people from talking about something that's real, all you got to do is make them feel uncomfortable when they talk about it, and they won't. If you make me feel uncomfortable about talking about white people and the reality of how they treat us, then I won't talk about it. But if I'm comfortable talking about it, that's what brings about the change. Have you not heard us as a people, when we talk about white, we whisper, white people say it.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about us, we don't do that. And we could be even sitting in the midst. I was sitting with someone the other day eating, and they were talking about how this country, the desires of the country is to stay white in terms of political control, and we're sitting in this restaurant and we're talking about slavery, and then we're talking just like I'm talking. But when they say white people, they say white people.
Yeah. Guilty.
Why?
Guilty.
Because we're scared.
Yeah.
We're afraid of white people. That's our God. They are the ones who we submit to, who we have surrendered to. That's worship. When you surrender to Christianity, you have surrendered to white folk. When you surrender to Judaism, you have surrendered to white folk, because they are the ones who control it, and they are the ones who determine what it is. Tell me one thing that we learned growing up in the church that did not come from the evangelical church. Not one thing. Everything that we have ever changed in our direction of the church originated with the evangelicals. The only reason that black folk who are in church support Donald Trump is because of the evangelicals and abortion. The one issue is abortion. They don't look at the racism. They look at abortion. Now, that is not an anomaly, because we have always had people who are of African descent who were used by the enslaver to control those who are enslaved. So that's nothing new. It's nothing. It just uses a different way. So what am I saying to you? I am saying to you that sweeping the house clean means that the whole of Christianity and Judaism and all its falsehoods are going to be swept from the minds of humanity. And it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we put it in macro what the truth of the matter is, so that something will be there to take its place. Because if we don't, it's going to come back with a vengeance. That's what I'm saying.
But you know what? I thought about how you tell us it's imperative that we,
Yeah.
the people that you cover, that we do what we need to do.
Yes.
Because if we don't, this thing it could be self-destructive.
No, it's going to be destructive.
Destructive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I say that not because I think we won't.
Mm-hmm.
I say that because we have to put it in the macro. We have to be on the same page. That's why. That's the reason I say that.
It's no joke.
I mean, think about this. Right now, there has never been a time when a Republican senator has ran against a Democrat, and the percentage in South Carolina, and the percentage points between the two have been 2% until now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an African male running against Graham, and the difference between them in terms of the polls is 2%. It has never been that close, ever. You say, well, he doesn't have a chance. He doesn't if we don't give him one. You say, well, how can we do that? The same way we've done everything else. The same way that we've dealt with feminism, racism, we deal with it the same way. By our desires, by putting it in the macro, by trusting what we know. Now, you say, well, that's politics. All of it is. understand something. There was no separation between politics and Jesus. The difference is this. Peter thought that Jesus was coming to the earth to establish an earthly kingdom. Jesus came to the earth to establish a spiritual kingdom. For what? For the benefit of humanity. Because the earthly kingdom did not benefit humanity. Because they were racist. And that is the reason Romans did not allow quote unquote Jews to come into their house because they were people of color. Look at your history. Look at your scriptures. They were not allowed. Look at what happened. When the Romans came into Palestine, which is now called Israel, of course, when the Romans came in, what did they do? The first thing that they did was get rid of all the priests and appoint their own priests in order to keep the people in check. And said to them, if you don't keep them in check, if there is an uprising, you're going to be held responsible for it. And as a result of that, Ananias and Caiaphas said, is it not more expedient for one to die than all of us? What was he saying? It's better for us to give Jesus up because he's trying to start some trouble than it is for the Romans to kill us because of what he's doing. That's what they were talking about. Fast forward to now. The church is more, the African church deals with politics more than anything else, but yet it says we can't talk about politics in the church. We need to separate that. If that is the case, why do you let them come to your church? Why? I had a congregation get mad at me because I told them you ain't talking in my church. If you want to talk to the people in this church at Mount Calvary, you can ask them. If you want to talk to them, you need to come this evening. Well, they won't be here this evening. Well, they don't want to hear what you got to say. Because if they did, they will come back. So what am I saying to you? The African preacher is in the same position as was Caiaphas in Jesus when Jesus walked the earth. Keep them in check. Keep them voting and not knowing what they're voting for. Keep them running around in circles and not getting anywhere. Keep them in a position where they talk about Jesus, but they don't talk about your racism. They don't deal with the truth. They deal with what they say is in the scriptures, but they don't deal with what's in the scriptures. The reality of the scriptures is not known to us because we have never heard the reality of the scriptures, because we have heard the scriptures from the mouth of those who have manipulated the scripture for their benefit. And honestly, there are those who will not like what I'm saying, but I don't give a damn. I'm sorry. I just don't care. How about that? I don't care. I'm at a point of desperation, maybe. And the reason I say desperation is because I see this huge push to keep things as they are. And I see that with the African church. The only reason the African church is supporting Biden is because white folk told them to. That's the only reason. And I see this, and I see this as a means as pushback to what we are establishing for the whole of humanity. I don't see young people leaving the church. I see young people turning their back on racism. They are more spiritual than we ever were. When I look at that young person who is African, what do I see? A return to our roots. Where you say, well, I don't know about that. Everything that we did that was spiritual, we were told that it was demonic or superstitious. Were we not? We were told that it was voodoo. Mm-hmm. We were told that it was witchcraft. Every single thing that we did. But now I see young people returning to that. Africans are doing it, and Caucasian young people as well. And what is that? They are returning to a spiritual desire. I'm sorry, a desire for a spiritual understanding of how this world functions. When they want to bring calmness in their house and get negative energy out, they burn sage. We've always done that. They start burning incense now for more than weed. Because you used to burn incense to get, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no name calling.
We're using
You're right.
essential oils,
Yeah.
essential oils to heal our bodies and to bring peace and calmness to our soul. This has always been what we have done. We have begun to meditate, and I'm not talking about just us who are talking about it in here. I'm talking about at large. The younger people with whom I come in contact are meditating. Why are they meditating? Because they want a connection with the world that brought them into being. They want to understand that they are one with that world. Yet, we are told by Christianity and Judaism that that is demonic. Why do they call it demonic? Because Buddha meditated. Yet, Jesus talked about meditation all the time. Because prayer is what? Meditation.
Yeah.
So I am saying that we are at this we're at this crossroads. We're at the crossroads where we have to make a decision about the direction that we're going to take. We're going to have to make a decision about where we go from here. And the decision that we make about where we go from here is going to determine how humanity comes together as one or remains separate in terms of the differences that has been created and perpetuated by Christianity. The whole idea of race is a made-up thing. Race is not real. Race did not come into being until slavery. It was race when race really came into being. It was for the purpose of separating people of color from people who were enslaving them. That was it, and to keep it there. Now, if it was not powerful, and if Christianity was not as powerful as it is, then why is it that the Christian preachers could convince poor white men to go and die fighting for slavery, and they didn't own slaves? And they were just as poor when they came back from the war as they were when they went. Why is that so? If it's not powerful, then why is it that when white people got Sunday school classroom, we got Sunday school classroom? When white people got vans, we got vans. When white people got gymnasium, we got gymnasium. When white people started moving their graves from their churches to other places, we started doing the same thing. I mean, it seems like it doesn't matter, but if you look at the pattern, if you follow the pattern, you will see that even when we go to the seminary, everything that's taught in the seminary is based upon Matthew Henry and Schofield and Nelson, the men who believe that the races should never mix. That's the seminary teachings are based upon racism, upon the men who came out of England who were racist, as well as the Caucasians from this country who were racist. It is no wonder that the Creator said to me, when I sought to go to a seminary, I'm your teacher. Never went to a seminary. Got put out the one I went to just as a visitor.
Did they really? Did they like escort you out or something?
No, I asked the question, and what happened is Posey was going to this seminary, and they told them to bring a friend, and
Not you.
and he took me, and I asked the question, and when he went back, they told him, "Don't bring me in your and if he did, don't come back."
That's weird.
Huh?
That was really rude.
It was funny to us. Because of the question I asked. The question I asked was considered to be pagan.
So they said, come again and bring a friend. Don't bring
Don't bring him.
But do you see what? Can you see
Yeah, and I'm sick of
the
it.
pattern here? I mean, it is irritating to me.
It is. It really is.
Let me see if I can find some of this stuff.
Come on. Hey. Tristan.
Where am I?
Well, you were talking about Harry and Meghan, and you were giving examples of, you know, some manifestations of the house being clean. You're talking about where you were in Matthew.
Okay. I want to read something for you. This guy writing about the visit to Florida
To where?
with Trump, with the evangelicals in Florida. He says, I am used to this kind of thing from Trump, twisting stuff. But I was stunned when I witnessed evangelical Christians, those who identify with the good news of Jesus Christ, raising their hands in a posture of worship as Trump talked about socialism and gun rights. I watched my fellow evangelicals rising to their feet and jumping and pumping their fists when Trump said he would win re-election in 2020. And he did this in the face of what? He spent the whole evening mocking his enemies, trafficking in half-truths in order to instill fear in people whom God commands to fear not, and proving that he is incapable of expressing anything close to Christian humility. This is what evangelicals are saying. So there was a sifting that's taking place. There was a separation that's taking place. I will separate the wheat from the tare. What were we talking about? That there has to be a transformation from the Christian dogma to kingdom principles. And when we start dealing with kingdom principles, then the light begins to be seen by the souls of other people. And when that light is seen by the souls of other people, what happened? They began to see a contradiction between what they've been taught and what is taking place. This guy who wrote has no inkling truly of what the scriptures are saying. However, he has enough of it to see that there is a contradiction between what you tell me you believe and what's actually taking place. Why was it necessary for this to happen? It was necessary for this contradiction to be in your face. That this is not the first time that you've had races being supported by Christians, by evangelicals. This is not the first time. But this is the first time that you've had it so boldly presented.
Yeah.
And the reason it is boldly presented now is because there is a man standing in the gap. If all of this comes out and there is nothing to put in its place, then it becomes worse than what it was in the beginning. And I will give you an example of that. When January the 1st, 1863, when the Emancipation Proclamation was issued, and in sequence, the enslaved began to be free, because all of it didn't happen at one time. What do we see? There was nothing put in its place. And we see that in the 1870s, things got so bad with the murder, the lynching of people who were enslaved. They got so bad until the federal government established something called the Justice Department in order to protect those who were previously enslaved from the Klan and the brown shirts and other people like them. Because the house was swept clean. The idea of slavery was supposedly removed, but nothing was put in its place. And it got worse. Okay, The house was swept clean. During the time that we were doing the civil rights, voter rights bills, all these things, nothing was put in its place in terms of protections. Now, there were a minimum amount of protections there because everything had to be filtered through the Justice Department, the Civil Rights Division. That was cut out of the Voting Rights Act. And when that was cut out of the Voting Rights Act, what happened? Now they're back with a vengeance instituting laws to prevent people from voting, which gives rise to a Donald Trump. Why? Nothing was put in its place. Why? Because the things that were supposedly put in its place are things that men can manipulate, that men can change. Laws can be changed. However, the laws of the universe cannot be altered. So when humanity begins to embrace the laws of the universe, which is also the laws of the kingdom, when they begin to embrace these things, men can't change those things. These are truths that cannot be altered. And the truth that cannot be altered, once they are embraced, their eye is open. And when the eye is open, they may not know what they see, but they know what they're experiencing is something that's not right. And they begin to change it. Let me tell you about something that you probably never knew about. In 1979, I believe it was 76 or 79, I think it was. No, I'm sorry. That was something else in 79. That was the thing in Iran in 79. In 1999. In 1999, there was something called the Faircloth resolutional provision. The Faircloth provision says that no money from the federal government, in essence, this is what it says, this is not word for verbatim, read it. It says that no monies from the federal government can ever be used to build low-income housing. In other words, there's no money can be able to be allocated anymore for building projects. That sounds so simple. But do you know what it was actually saying? It's actually saying that we're not going to build any more low-income housing. We're not going to keep in good repair the ones that exist. And we're going to push people of color to a place where they don't have a choice. But moving to this housing is going to be dilapidated. Now, what does that lead to? That leads to all of these projects like over there by the hospital being torn down. Now, where are the people? They're scattered. You see where I'm coming from? So what must be put in its place? The thing that must be put in its place is the understanding that the whole of humanity has a universal right to survival, has a universal right to live in dignity with self-respect. It sounds like it's just simple, but it's not. It is spiritual being manifested in this reality. Are you with me? These are the things that we must embrace. And this is why I talk about so vehemently the idea of the thing being swept clean, the idea of God and versus evil. If you see God as being good, then you're always telling God what you want and what you need, but you're not doing anything about it. They say that, okay, if you vote, you got it. No! You have to do more than that. If you don't change the mindset of people, then it doesn't make any difference. Understand this. You can change the government tomorrow, but nothing will change. Why? You have Republican government, you have Democrat government, nothing changes. You know why? Because government doesn't change until you change the hearts of people. When the hearts of humanity changes, then government changes. Right now, the only thing changes are the people who occupy the positions. But the basic tenements of it doesn't change. And they won't change unless the hearts are changed. And the church is not changing hearts. The church is raising money. The church is not taking care of people who need it. The church is manipulating people who depend on it. And I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about all churches. That's the basic. Look at what happened with Catholicism. The reason South Americans are primarily Catholic is because they went in there and took over everything they had and forced them to convert. Now they're the poorest people in the world, but the Catholic Church is the richest in the world. Can you see the contradictions here? So that's why I see with this whole thing with Meghan and Harry and with the Trumpism thing. I see Trump as the mirror and exposing the evangelicals. Now let me show you something there. This is where I was headed with that in the beginning. I want you to see something. When we look at Revelation, it says that the government receives its power from the church, which is, it says that the beast of the land receives its power from the beast of the sea. The beast of the sea is the church, and the beast of the land, should I say religion, I should say, and the beast of the land is government. Now, who is Trump depending on to put him in office? Religion, the evangelicals. That's who his base is. So the power that the government has comes from religion. And now that those who have been involved in religion, not just us in terms of this room or people at cover or people on the phone or wherever, but the people who are involved in this evangelical setting have enough understanding of right and wrong, of what's moral and immoral, to see that this is not what represents us. So now it is beginning to lose its power. Why? It's struggling to hold on to its power because religion is beginning to lose its power because the principles of the kingdom are beginning to operate in this earth. That's where the struggle is. And the pushback is seen when you look at the fight to make sure that Biden gets there so religion can continue to give the power to the government. But when you look at what's happening, he's dropping like a rock in the ocean. Why? Because if you look at the people 35 and younger, you see Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. If you look at the people in church, 55 and older, you see Biden. That is no coincidence. This is not just politics. This is life. Jesus talked about what was happening in his day. Jesus says, I can't talk to you about enlightenment because you don't even understand what's happening in the earth. If I tell you about the enlightenment and you don't understand earthly principles, what good is it going to do you? So what is he saying? You have to understand how the Romans function. And if you can understand how the Romans function, then I can show you what enlightenment is, and you will know how to bring this to an end without shedding blood, without hating anyone, without going to a physical war. You can take it by force, but you don't have to do it physically, because guess what? The only thing that you're going to do when you try to take it by force physically is antagonize folks and make it more difficult. You do not have the physical weapons to do it. If you think you do, look at Iran. Iran has weapons, but not enough. We look at all of these things. We look at right now. You talk about we're in this conversation about what happened and what's happening in Iran, but we're not looking at the genesis of it all. We're not looking at in 1953 they overthrew a democratically elected government and put the Shah in. And in 1979 they overthrew the government and put the Shah out. So the reason the government that's in place is there now is because of what America did in 1953. Now, the guy who got killed the other night by Trump, right? The reason he was there is because of America. If America had not invaded Iraq, he wouldn't have been there.